even though the hose wasn't working, the hose was stretched all the way across my lawn, which it hadn't been the day before. We had a gardener come every Monday, and they would always leave the gardening service would always leave the hose neatly coiled in the front of the house. And by the Wednesday, when I came back in and the fire was still going, it was all stretched all the way across my lawn. And it was clear to me that some neighbor had tried to fight the fire on my fence on my behalf. And I still don't know who it was. And to me, that was the story of Pacific Palisades, that everybody helped everybody if they could. And it was very humbling because even though it is somewhat of a mixed community, it is a very affluent community. The median income is $200,000. A lot of people in my neighborhood would go to charity events. They would give money. I know 2 neighbors who lost their home who were always going to charitable events, looking very beautiful and made up and everything in their fancy car and beautiful dresses and tuxedos. And now people were recipients of charity. Now people were literally accepting cash grants, or in my case, I couldn't use my winter coat. So I picked up a donated coat, and I still have it. It's been fantastic in the East Coast winter. And it was very humbling. And we've had to deal with unique problems in insurance as well. So my wife joked later that it might have been better if I had let the house burn, because she imagined it was simpler to get the insurance to pay out if you had actually lost everything. Turns out it's not so simple even then. But I think psychologically it's better to have a standing home because...
Well, I think that the perception, especially before your fire, was that if your home didn't burn, then it was somehow intact, and then just coming in and wiping everything down would work. And that can be true, but it really depends on what year it was built, and what type of windows it has. It has so many elements predicated upon whether or not that's true. But in your fires, in both Eaton and Palisades, it's what we call urban conflagration, a very hard word to say, but it means that not only is smoke infiltrating your house, but it has far more chemicals in it, because literally everything that was inside of somebody's home, from garage to, under your kitchen sink, for everything that builds your home, becomes part of the smoke that then infiltrates your home. And most people also don't realize that a home easily burns from the outside in most of the time. So you didn't have any ember inclusion, which is great. So I'm so happy for you for that. I love that your windows were double pane. That's a very big deal. But I just think that there was a lack of understanding. We knew a little bit before your fires, but why it is that so many of them survived. The other thing I would like to say is when people started calling me within 12 hours of your fire, it was mostly on the Palisades side. One of the things I heard over and over again was that people who were so used to giving were not used to receiving. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because for many it was a surreal experience. So go forth and tell us about having a smoke damaged home. Very difficult. So insurance companies were not kind.
Right. So I'll try to summarize our insurance story. But again, on paper, we had a fantastic policy. And I have a friend who works in health insurance, and he said, you have to get a public adjuster to help you. Now, I know some people do it on their own, but public adjusters are basically almost like lawyers for your insurance claim. There are people who are certified who know the California laws or whatever state they work in, they're licensed to work in. They know the codes, and they help you put together your claim, and they negotiate with the insurance company on your behalf. And ours has been fantastic, actually. But the insurance company has their own adjusters, and they sent someone who was very kind, but completely in over his head. He had never done anything like this before, and he didn't really understand how to estimate our damage. They then replaced him with another adjuster, and this is very common to have this cycle of adjusters. Another adjuster who tried to do everything from his computer and never wanted to visit the house. And I kept inviting him to visit the house, and he kept declining. And he essentially said to us, here's $5,000 for the contents of your house, which we estimated was about 1% of the cost that we had suffered. And he emphasized that what the insurance company wanted was for us to clean the house before they decided whether there was anything actually damaged. And he said, basically, you can clean anything. You can clean a bed, you can clean your clothes, you can clean your couch. And we had actually tried this a little bit. I took a few clothes from the house when I was able to get in, and I washed them, and I was okay with my sweats that I salvaged from the house, but my wife put on a dress that I had brought for her, and she broke out in a rash, and she said, I'm never wearing anything from that house again. It's just not happening.
Yep.
And we tried explaining to the insurance company that that's not really going to fly. And we had learned that anything upholstered was basically going to be uncleanable. You could clean the dining room table, but you couldn't clean the dining room chairs, which had upholstery on them. So we were hugely frustrated because they essentially offered us nothing, the equivalent of a bucket and a mop. And then they cycled us through another adjuster and another adjuster and another adjuster. And that's when we came across Joy Chen, and Joy said, yes, this is a common experience. And I do think that the Eaton Fire Survivors Network really giving some coherence to this shared experience helped us, because right around the time she got involved, we finally landed on an adjuster who was willing to work with us and started giving us the first real payments for the contents of our house, which was incredibly important. Fast forward to September last year, August, September of 2025, so now about 7 or 8 months after the fire. And we're still not really getting anywhere on repairs. So we've had a few payments for contents, but nowhere on repairs. And the insurance company then issued a kind of veiled threat, as if it were our fault that we weren't able to go ahead yet, and said, we're going to trigger this 35-day warning they have to give you before your alternate living expenses basically are denied and you have to move back into your home. And at that point, I said, okay, I'm trying to fight to save my house. I want to go back to my house, but I had to put my house on the market because I was not going to be able to afford to pay my mortgage, which we're still paying, and to pay rent in the new place we were living if our insurance company cut us off. And that was upsetting to some neighbors who were aware that I was involved in the community and trying to help the rebuilding process. And here I was putting my house on the market, which obviously you can do, and people sell their lots and they sell their homes, and that's totally fine. But it was hard emotionally, but I just said, look, I have no option. I don't have another financial backstop here. We switched adjusters again, or I should say the insurance company did, and that threat was withdrawn, and I took the house off the market. And then the stage we're at now is we have managed to remediate the entire interior of the house. Now, to mention the chemicals that you alluded to earlier, we did testing, which we were able to convince the insurance company to pay for. Not everyone has been so lucky. We found lead and zinc and bismuth inside the house among the 17 heavy metals that you're supposed to test for. And the most concerning one was lead. Obviously, we're all familiar with the problem of lead poisoning, but there are others. There was no asbestos, which is another common problem. So we had the house remediated, and that part is done. The remediation company said, well, we're going to test the soil as well. They tested the soil. There was lead, arsenic, and bismuth in the soil as well, plus, lead, zinc, and bismuth, plus arsenic in the soil. And initially we thought maybe we'll have to take 3 inches of soil off. Well, it turned out to be 6 inches because the contamination was so bad. And the other problem is California doesn't have any landfills that will take that soil because it's now hazardous waste, so we had to truck it to Arizona. The cost went ballooning very high, and the stage I'm at now is I'm trying to figure out how to pay for that, even while moving ahead with the rest of my repairs. So we have an adjuster that we're working with. My public adjuster is working with the insurance company's adjuster, and that seems to be going fairly well, although everything takes a long time.
I want to go back for a minute too, because it is how to disaster. So a couple of things. Unfortunately, you all have had to really take the helm, even on how to navigate smoke damage. For those of you who don't know, the California Fair Plan initially said, "Oh, that's not us. We don't do that," even though it's the insurance of last resort, and they absolutely should be doing that. So they were taken to court, and then they had to actually cover smoke damage. The other thing is that, ALE or a loss of use or whatever, there's different acronyms for it, but those are the two main ones, or LOS and ALE, that gives you, money so that you can continue to live, or you can rent other places.